Hello guys and welcome to episode 59 of the Beat Your Backlog podcast, a podcast discussing the things gamers like to put off, get to another day, and will definitely beat later, their backlog. I'm your host Adam, and today we are joined by a very special guest, the one, the only, John from Gaming in the Wild. John, how are you doing?
Hello, thank you for having me on the show. Yeah, I'm doing well, thank you. We're coming out of the winter out in Iceland. It's getting lighter and brighter, and yeah, I'm happy about that. And I'm happy to be on Beat Your Backlog. I've really been enjoying the show, so thanks for asking me.
I appreciate it, yeah. And I've been trying to get you on for a while, but I was kind of thinking, like, what is the best topic to get you on with? Because the Beat Your Backlog, I think the problem with having guests on is that, like, I'm playing my own personal backlog, so a lot of the games aren't very current or maybe aren't necessarily someone else's cup of tea. But I think we have a good topic today that is kind of relevant and hopefully is evergreen and will be kind of interesting for my listeners and for your listeners. But before we get into that topic, I'd like to maybe just have a quick introduction from you, like if you just want to introduce yourself and, you know, what your content is about.
Yeah, sure. Well, we first met because you were doing Switch Indie Fix, I remember.
Yes, back in the day.
And I
know.
emailed you because I was playing a lot of Switch at the time, and I felt like sort of writing a little bit about games, and you very generously had me write a couple of reviews for your site. But since then, I've started a podcast of my own, or at least I think it was still running at that time, actually, called Gaming in the Wild. It's been running for 5 years. And it's a weekly podcast with game reviews, bit of news, bit of game chat, occasional developer interviews. And the podcast's been going really nicely. Started up a YouTube channel for it as well, making some YouTube videos these days. Yeah, Gaming in the Wild, I guess it focuses on the, as I always say at the start of every podcast, the artistic, creative side of games, indie games, AAA games, just really in love with the medium, in love with the possibilities of it, and just really enjoy talking about it. So that's what the podcast is.
Yeah, I really enjoy listening to it. It's like one of the podcasts that's, even though I've been on and off games for like the last couple of years, it's always been one that's just been consistent. Like, I just love your kind of how you analyze games, and like you said, more from like the kind of the artistic side and the games that do things interestingly. I really like the podcast, and like you said about the YouTube, I feel like you've upped your YouTube game recently as well, and it seems to be kind of paying dividends for you. The channel seems to be doing really well.
Yeah, the channel's been popping off, actually. It's been a really fun project. You know, I've often worked in the past as like a social media manager or whatever, and I've realized that's because it's the gamer in me that likes watching numbers go up, right?
Yeah.
And if you're doing social media, you're putting things out there, seeing how many likes, seeing how many retweets, how many followers, like what goes viral. And it's like a game-like challenge.
Like a game. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And YouTube is a bit like that, and they know it. And so I think there's a big reason that there's a huge section of gamer YouTube. It's all the gamers just trying to crack the puzzle. And that's what I've been doing, and I'm having a lot of fun with it.
Yeah, great, cool. Then the reason that we have John on, and the topic is kind of what you already talked about. We kind of go back with our Switch content, and the topic for today, or the mini series that I'm kind of launching with you as the first guest, is a series called Nintendo Switch Memories. And the idea behind the series is to kind of look back on people's memories and thoughts of the original Nintendo Switch before we go into the Switch 2. So as we're recording this is the week, exactly 1 week before the Switch Direct happens in April. And I think it's just like, I don't know, for me, it was one of the reasons that I got really into making content creation was the Switch. And I think there's a couple of reasons that you kind of got back into gaming because of the Switch and also creating content. So I thought you would be the perfect guest to kick this off with. And hopefully, you know, some other guests will be coming on as well that I've kind of interacted with in the past, and maybe some new people. So yeah, I'm looking forward to getting into your memories and what you remember fondly, what maybe you didn't like so much about the Switch. And before we do that though, I will just quickly mention that this episode is supported by Patreon, and our lovely patrons Hopple, who I think you know, and Kazapi. They are wonderful patrons who have been supporting, and if you would like to support, you can also go to patreon.com/beatyourBacklog or click on the link in the description below. And if you decide to support, thank you very much. You can also support on it just for free by following, and you'll get the content whenever it goes live for everyone. But with that out of the way, let's get on to your Nintendo Switch memories, John. And I'd like to really kind of dig into what your kind of gaming preferences were before the Switch. Like, what were you playing beforehand? What kind of influenced you to buy the Switch? Because I know there was kind of a pause in your gaming history just before the Switch, and obviously with a podcast name like Gaming in the Wild, it's maybe suggest that Breath in the Wild was quite influential on you. So yeah, let us know what your history was.
Yeah, I mean, I've told this before in various places, but I guess people will be hearing it for the first time here. But like, I was a lifelong gamer. My dad bought a BBC Micro, an Acorn Electron back in the 80s, or when I was just a tiny kid, basically. Learned BASIC back then, and we used to type in like basic code from game magazines and then get Space Invaders on the screen. Just amazing. And then, I went through all of the generations of Nintendo. I was begging my parents to get a Nintendo NES, but I managed to talk them into it on the Super NES. So that's where my Nintendo journey began. And then since then, I remember working in London, commuting for an hour a day with a little Game Boy Advance, playing Advance Wars and playing, the 2D Zelda games. Came through various generations of PlayStation. Even bought an Xbox like way after the fact just to check out Halo. So I've always been just curious about it all. But then when I moved out to Iceland, I had to downsize all my stuff. So I sold everything. And at that point, I had Saturn, Xbox, various PlayStations, various Nintendos. But I just had to get all my stuff down to 2 cases. So I sold everything.
Yeah.
It was hard to let go of the games collection. I only kept a couple of things: the Game Boy, a copy of Shadow of the Colossus from PS2.
Nice.
Like a couple bits and pieces.
Yeah.
And then I got just swept up in the whirlwind of life in Iceland, fell out of gaming for a while. And then eventually it was the Switch that brought me back.
Nice. So my first question would be, do you still have the Game Boy and the copy of Shadow of Colossus? Is it still there in Iceland with you, or are they still there in Iceland with you?
They are. The Shadow of the Colossus is nice, man. It's got 5 little art prints in it.
Nice.
Of the different colossi.
Yeah.
And that was why I kept it. I just knew that game was special even back then, if you know what I mean. So it's really, really nice. It just had this mythic quality to it. I couldn't let it go.
It's one of the
I've still got the game.
Sorry, I was just going to say it's one of the black holes in my gaming history that I've never played. The original.
Well, the version I had was the PS2.
Yeah.
And it was terrible. The frame rate was shocking.
Yeah.
It was very choppy, very blurry. And so the remaster is definitely the way to go, but it's just a sentimental object. The Game Boy actually got pickpocketed on the tube.
Oh, no.
But a couple of years ago, I treated myself and I bought the same one online. So I have it. It's the little red SP.
The clamshell one. Nice.
Yeah. So it's so classic to me and so nostalgic that eventually I bought myself another one on eBay just to right that wrong.
It's such a good console. Like I remember, because me and my brother always we started with colour and then we went to advance, and then the revolution of having the backlight on the SP was just like blew our minds, because we used to spend a lot of time.
Such as it is. Such as it is.
We'd spend a lot of times in cars playing and in the night time. That sound, so nostalgic.
Yeah. Oh shit, sorry. Yeah, I've got Mario in there.
Nice.
Yeah, but there was a bit of a story with Switch. I mean, I didn't come back to gaming for ages, and I actually got very sick 5 years ago and was stuck in the house for a couple of years, basically.
Yeah.
And a friend of mine was like, get yourself a Switch. So I thought, all right, I'll do it. I got myself a Switch, got myself Breath of the Wild. And it kind of helped me out an awful lot, actually. I guess it was the same for a lot of people with COVID. This was just before COVID.
Yeah.
But being able to go out into this vast world and reacclimatizing to games, rediscovering games. So the Switch was really instrumental in me coming back to games after a 6-7 year break, basically.
Yeah, I think that was maybe the case with a lot of people. I think especially for Nintendo. For me, I've had a lot of Nintendo consoles in the past, and just I don't know why I bought them. There was always sort of 1 or 2 games that I just wanted to play on the console for whatever reason. But I never was really I'd never played a Zelda game before Breath of the Wild, or Mario before Mario Odyssey, and I think there was just something about the Switch, its sort of how easy it was to understand what it did, maybe, and that it was easy to pick up and play, and it had this blockbuster game right from the very start that I think just got a lot of people in. And one thing I can remember, at least for me, was it was really hard to get the Switch. It was sold out everywhere. Did you have that problem too, that you just, the first few months you didn't see it, or was this a bit later when you decided to pick it up?
I think it was mid-2018, so it had been out for a year already.
Yeah.
And yeah, they just had them on the shelves here in Iceland. Just took a drive out to a little electronics shop and got one.
Nice.
Took a while to get the digital store set up, I remember, because it's not supported in Iceland.
Right, okay.
And I was like, oh shit, how am I going to buy anything?
Yeah.
So I was fretting over it, and I realized you can just change your country in the account options. So I'm a UK Switch user.
Okay. That's good then. Yeah, no, for me it was very much like I was caught in like the FOMO when it launched because, like I said, I wasn't that invested in the Switch itself. Like I knew this NX was coming out, the new Nintendo Switch console, and then when it released and the reviews of Breath of the Wild were good, I was like, I need to get one, and I think it took about 3 months before I even saw one, and that was the one that I ended up buying and still have now. So it was quite a pain. I hope it's not going to be like that with the Switch 2 when the Switch 2 releases.
Yeah, me too. I really hope. I mean, Nintendo is very good at making mass market products, right?
Yeah. And creating FOMO.
Yeah, but I mean, with the way things have been with chips and stuff, I mean, I imagine that they are aiming for a huge availability everywhere.
Yeah.
But gaming has just grown so much, and you know, there's this fever pitch day one thing that I don't remember from being a kid. Actually, I don't remember ever like knowing when a console was coming out. Really, maybe the N64 was the first one.
Yeah.
Where there was some hype around it, but before then, it was just like every now and then it's asked for the new Nintendo. Like it wasn't so kind of tightly tied to the dates, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, for me, I remember the PlayStation 2, not necessarily the release date, but I remember that Christmas when it released and like really like hoping and not really expecting to get it. And then I remember my mum and dad got me and my brother it, and we went. Have you seen that like meme of the boy that gets the Nintendo 64 on Christmas? That was like me and my brother with the PS2 back then.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. So the first game you kind of got into then was Breath of the Wild, but how did your kind of library grow from there? Like what games did you then think like, okay, now I have this new console, I managed to get onto the UK eShop. Like where did your gaming library go from there?
Well, Breath of the Wild actually was the only game I played for a really long time. For like a couple of months.
Yeah.
And I have like 225 hours in it or something.
Nice.
And a lot of that happened in that first flush, where I was just playing it every day for hours and was just completely blown away by it and just exploring every corner of the map, every cave and every mountaintop, and just kind of really, really taken with it. It was like the open world game of my dreams in some way, because if you think about the time I'd taken off games, like Shadow of the Colossus was the only open world game I'd played.
Okay. Yeah. So...
And that's a really small world, you know?
Yeah.
It was like a mind blowing. I'd missed things like No Man's Sky and Fallout, the Fallout 3 and 4 and all that stuff, like the other, you know, the Red Deads and all that stuff, and Assassin's Creeds. So it was the first open world game I'd played, really, and in the modern sense.
Yeah.
And it was just, you know, the dynamic weather, the skylines, the views, the mystery and joy and vastness of it all just kept me amused for a really long time. And when I finally decided, like, now it's time, I'm going to go and kill Ganon, it's time to do it, I was kind of sad to let it go in a way.
Yeah. I had the same experience.
But the next game, I mean, after I had seen credits, I was like, well, what do I do now? I remember looking through the eShop, just browsing games, and one thumbnail sort of spoke to me in some way. It was a little white skull with horns, and it was Hollow Knight.
Ah, wow. So you went from like one of the best open world games ever to probably one of the best Metroidvanias ever.
Yeah, exactly. Did you play Hollow Knight as well?
I've tried it. I think I played when it first released on like Steam. I played it for a couple of hours, and then when it released on Switch, I played it for like a weekend. And it was one of those games where I played it, was really into it, and then I think I stopped for like a couple of weeks. And then when I went back, I was like, okay, where am I? What was I doing? And I was like, okay, I'll get back to it, but I never did. And it's maybe something I should do before Silksong comes out.
I mean, it's a game. It's, you know, for a game that is as popular as it is, it's a little bit of an acquired taste. It's really hard. It's like incredibly hard from the beginning, and it's not at all friendly. Like the first area of the map, the Forgotten Crossroads, goes on forever, and there are all kinds of enemies in there. You've got no health. A couple of hits will kill you. And it's very hostile. You get very lost. You don't really know where you're going.
Yeah,
and so I would say there's like
great either, right? Like the map is notoriously sort of bad for the.
I actually don't mind the map in Hollow Knight. It's one of those ones where you can like see there's like a thin white line for the wall, and if there is an exit of the room, there is a break in the wall.
Yeah.
So I didn't mind the map too much, but I will say that it's a very labyrinthine game. It's very easy to get completely lost, disoriented, not really know where you are. But if you can get through the first 8-10 hours, I would say, you start to realize like it sort of opens up like a flower. It's like this world is just something special. There's different biomes, different depths, characters that you meet that recur around the world. And I remember thinking as I was playing it, I was an original Super Metroid player on the Super Nintendo, and thinking this is to Super Metroid as Breath of the Wild is to Link to the Past in a way. It's like just an exploding of that formula. And Hollow Knight did find its home on the Switch, right? It was a Steam release that sold modestly, but then it came onto the Switch at the right time. Millions of people bought it, and that kicked off the sales on Steam, and the rest is history.
Exactly. Yeah. I guess that was like for a while, that was the USP of the Switch, was that these indie games were coming over from Steam, and I guess the audience on the Switch was hungry for indie games, and was what was blowing them up. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, Team Cherry themselves have said that it was the Switch that changed everything for them.
Yeah, it was such an interesting time, and it's like something like I get really like nostalgic for, was that when indies released on the Switch, they were usually always very successful and really good, like really high quality. Like that's why I started Switch Indie Fix, because I was like, well, at the time there was Nintendo had a pretty decent lineup, first party games, but it was like, okay, now all of these games are coming up from Steam. I didn't have a PC back then, so I was like, this is the only way I can play them. And the thought was that indies are short games, so they should be quite easy to play through and review. But obviously games like Hollow Knight kind of aren't short and easy to play. But how was that then for your experience of, like you said, with Breath of the Wild? You kind of like this feeling of getting lost and not really knowing where you are, but the freedom it felt. But then also in Hollow Knight, you also had that feeling, but on the other side of like, this game is very difficult. I'm lost, but I don't want to be lost. Lost in like, I don't know where I'm going. How, after having such a long break, like, did that feel like really abrasive to you, or was it something that you kind of just enjoyed because of how good Hollow Knight was?
Well, I would say that the thing that spoke to me about Hollow Knight was the art vision, which created this real strong atmosphere. So it's got this orchestral soundtrack that is mournful. The knight themselves are this compelling little weirdo. And like, you meet some characters early on in Dirtmouth, and there is a mystery poised from the off. Like, where are we? We're at the top of something called the Hallow Nest, and what is down there? So I think that game did a really good job of igniting the flame of curiosity in me.
Yeah.
And once that was lit, I was willing to struggle a little. So I think that they did a really good job of hooking you early on with the look, the sound, and the mystery. And then you have to push through some walls to get further into it. But you have that lit in you. Like, you need to know.
Yeah, I think it's also like you said, like, I think people that know Metroid recognize what the game is straight away. Like, you go in and this is a Metroidvania, and I think the game is quite good at telling you. I mean, like I said, I didn't play that much of it, but it's quite good at realizing that, like, okay, the only way is down, and I just need to keep going down, and eventually, like you said, you see a little nub on the map where there's obviously maybe something there that you go and explore, and like a good Metroidvania, it teases you like, oh, look, there's something here that maybe later on you'll get a new perk that you'll be able to get to, or you'll get some charm that you'll be able to reach it. And as a player, that just eggs you on to be like, all right, I need to come back here, I need to remember this. I think it's
exactly, like, it's got those little wobbly floors. So you walk over a bit of floor and it kind of crumbles and crunches, and you're like, okay, so later I'll be able to break that open.
Ground pound, yeah.
But the thing that really got me with it was, it's after you get out of the Forgotten Crossroads, which is big and takes hours, the second areas that you get to, like the Green Path, completely different biome. And then this sort of foggy, mushroomy fungus section. And there's like a city down there, and there's all kinds of, the scope and scale of it became apparent to me. And I was like, wow, these guys have really they've invented a fantasy kingdom of the kinds that I've always loved, like the film Labyrinth or something. Where there's just different stuff everywhere, and it's just a constant flood of inspiration. I think that's what the Hallow Nest is, and that's what got me.
And it's crazy that it's made by two or three people. Hollow Knight 1. So so I know I don't want to spoil the video you made, but like when do you think Silksong is going to release? Are you kind of on the hype train that it will be a Switch 2 release game, or do you think they're just taking their time and it'll release when they're ready?
I've given up on predicting. Yeah, I've got no prediction for you. I mean, every year for the last 3 years, I've been like, I've put it into my most anticipated games of the year video.
Yeah.
Because I always thought it was coming out, and I still do.
Yeah.
But, been proven wrong a lot. So
yeah, it's crazy. Like I even some of the last Switch Indie Fix podcasts I did, I was talking about when is Silksong gonna release, and that was 4 or 5 years ago, I think now. So it's
exactly
it's crazy. Okay, so we got the open world kind of aspect covered. We got the Metroidvania. Is there any other sort of classic genres that you got into or back into on the Switch?
Well, yeah, another thing that happened while I was away from games, right, was that unbeknownst to me, Gone Home had come out, Journey had come out, Flower, Edith Finch, and the indie game revolution, the indie game renaissance had taken place, completely far away from me, and I had no idea about it.
Yeah.
And so it was just by going through the eShop, right, just flicking through the eShop, looking for something to play, and thumbnails and like looking at game descriptions and trailers, occasionally something would catch my eye. And again, it was partly the aesthetic, partly the music, the art design. But the next game that caught my eye was actually a really short indie game, and it was Far Lone Sales.
Ah, okay. So it's another one that I remember we covered it on Switch Indie Fix, but I didn't play it myself. But I remember the review was very, very positive.
Yeah, it's a funny little game. It's got a beautiful art style again, like Hollow Knight, and like Breath of the Wild. Music in games is very important to me.
Yeah.
And the soundtrack for Okamotive's Far Lone Sales is just gorgeous. It's this slightly mathy folk music that sounds like it could be like Tortoise played by Joanna Newsom's band or something. It's really, really special. The art design is great. You see this big hulking ship on the screen with wheels. And it's like a cutaway game. So the side will cut away and you can see your little character inside the machine. And it's like a little resource management, like puzzly thing. You have to jump on the bellows to get the engine to go. Then you have to release the steam before it overheats. You have to go out on the roof and open the sail. But then something's on fire, so you have to go back in. So it's this little, and eventually the machine starts to roll. And when it does start to roll and the wind is in the right direction, the camera zooms way out and you see this vast landscape. The music is playing and you just sit back and put the controller down.
Yeah.
And there were these moments of this just coasting across this post-human desert in this giant behemoth of a machine. And it was just sent chills down my spine.
Yeah, it's kind of sending them down, man, as you explain them. I thought you explained it very, very well. And I think that's what's so great about indie games, right? Is that like there can be experiences like this. Like it's a relatively small scale, like scoped game, but obviously the developers cared a lot about it and put a lot of work into it to make it look beautiful, to make it sound beautiful, to make you feel like you are like I seem to remember like people saying like the kind of ship or the vehicle almost feels like its own character there that you kind of grow an attachment to because you're the one that's more or less nursing it back to health to get it to go across this landscape.
Yeah, exactly. And it's a funny little game, right? Because in some ways it's perfect. In some ways, it's like weird and maddening and frustrating because you are doing this little puzzle where you're constantly running from place to place. So you're very busy.
Yeah, busy work.
But the reward is like moments of peace. But it has got like a nice narrative to it. Like you'll find these, you don't know what happened in this world, but all the people are gone. You'll occasionally see like a deer running. You can see all of these broken factories, like empty houses, traces of people, but no people.
Yeah.
And you don't really know why, and it never really tells you. It's a journey-like, right? So it's a wordless game. But as you trundle through the world, you will find places where you can mess with your ship a little bit. It's like narrative beats throughout it, and you do become very attached to the ship, and the ship evolves over time, and it goes to some really good places, even in its like 2-hour runtime. I would like recommend this one for you actually.
You selling me on it, yeah. I think the 2-hour runtime. That sold me. It's right. One, like I said, it's one that I know is like, like a kind of indie, not classic on the Switch, but I think it's another one that made its name on the Switch. And like I said, I remember when it came out, we we reviewed on Switch Indie Fix, and it got like a good score. And I think it even got a sequel, right? Like a
It did,
follow-up.
Changing Tides.
Yeah. Yeah,
And they
no.
are making a really exciting new game called Herdlings, actually, those people, where you're like herding these mammoths through a 3D world.
Yeah, I think it was at GDC, right? Like
Yeah.
that they were showing it off. Yeah, I was listening to another podcast and they were saying that like this was one of the standouts from GDC, which is cool.
Yeah, happy to hear that because I've got it on my fantasy critic team.
Oh, have you? Yeah. Cool. So then, I guess we're kind of sort like almost getting like a theme here, like a pattern, like these beautiful worlds that maybe beautiful in the sort of traditional sense, like Breath of the Wild, but also beautiful in sort of maybe this decaying, lost, dark presence. Is there any other games like that in your games of that stand out to you on the Switch?
There is one more, which I'm going to save for last, actually. But the next one is actually tonally very different, but I think you can probably see a pattern anyway. Because you are right. Like, I love melancholy art.
Yeah.
Like, I love sad stuff and mournful stuff and like quiet, dark, crumbly. Like, that's something about that speaks to me for sure.
Yeah.
But there was another indie game. Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, when you were writing on Switch Indie Fix and codes would come in, I was like, okay, there was John games and not John games, and it was kind of like, all right, these ones I'll pitch to you to see if you want, or you would come to me and ask for the codes, but I was like, all right, this is definitely a John game.
Yeah, 100%. Like atmospheric, slow, sad, aesthetic, for sure. But there was another one that, as I was starting to delve into the Switch library and discover like the past of indie games that I had missed, it was such a rich period for gaming, like 2018, 19 for me, when the podcast was first starting up.
Yeah.
And I just got on my Switch. But I was going through the eShop and I was starting to read like games of the year coverage from previous years.
Yeah.
And actually go and pick things out and add them to my list and buy them and play them. And, really like growing my knowledge of games. And it was a really rich, exciting time because I was starting to realize that while I'd been away from games, like the people like me who'd grown up with Mario and Metroid and Link to the Past and all of those games had grown up too.
Yeah.
And they'd started making games and they had been, through art school. They'd been through degrees. They'd been through literature degrees and like they were culturally interested, like, this millennium people with a rooting in games. And the games that they were making were like an artistic expression within games that just hadn't existed before. Like, it was all pixels and polygons and Pong and bats and Mario. But they were becoming more mature, basically. And one of the games that really hit that home for me was the next game that I wanted to talk about, which is Sayonara Wild Hearts.
Yes, a great game.
Yeah, and very different, right? I mean, although it still is a melancholy, it still is dark in its own way, but it's just a very different kind of darkness.
Yeah, it's like I think they describe it as like it's like you're playing a music album, right? Which is, I think, is the perfect kind of punchline for that game. Like it's the music, it's kind of the vocals, it's what's happening on the screen with these kind of I don't know how you describe them, like sort of like joke, like card deck themed sort of bad guys that are floating around, and you're like on this motorbike, like kind of almost like an endless runner. Like it's such an unusual game, but it's just pulled off so well that it's like, it's a great indie. Yeah,
it's an unusual one. It has got like one foot in arcade games where you're just driving, like Outrun or like games where you're just like platforming, collecting gems, like you said, endless runners, racing games of the past. Really arcadey feel. You can imagine putting money into a machine to play it.
Yeah,
it's level based. It has high scores. It has time challenges. But at the same time, on the other hand, it's got this different aspect to it. So all of that arcade gaminess is there, but it's also got this beautiful aesthetic to it where it's all neon, purple, blue, turquoise, pink, like a dream, like a neon dream.
Yeah.
And then this vision of like riding through the woods with this biker girl gang with like wolf masks on, like howling at the moon. And it's also got this kind of story about heartbreak too. Like at the start of the game, your protagonist is slumped in bed, devastated, and they kind of slide, the room turns upside down, and they kind of slide out of the skylight and into a dream, basically. And it's like this long dream sequence where they're battling their internal demons and trying to deal with their own grief and loss. and like self-loathing, and all of these characters that you meet kind of represent that journey. There's like tarot cards in there as well. It's all sort of mysticism and heartbreak in a really cool neon laser 80s style with this great Swedish pop music, and just a really solid core of a game as well.
Yeah.
So that one to me was like just a real winner, you know.
Yeah, it's a game that I think just respects your time as well. Like it's short, but like every second of it is like great. It's not like, because I don't know. I always get into this conversation about like, you know, what in video games, what is like value for money, and so for some people it's, I want, for every dollar that I spend or every euro or every pound, I want an hour of gameplay. And for me, I'm like, I want a game that is not going to waste my time. That every minute that I'm in the game, I feel like there's no baggage, there's no filler, there's whatever. And that is a game that is like that for me, where it's just like you get in, it's maybe 2 or 3 hours long, and it's just a fantastic game.
Yeah, you can finish it in a couple of hours, but then there is like a bronze, silver, gold, and S rank, I think, on every course. And there are also like tarot cards to collect that are in strange places. So as your motorbike is racing through the city, you can go left, go right, go under a bridge or jump over it. And you'll notice that some places there are like tucked away tarot cards. You have to really internalize the layout of the level to get them all. And there are bonuses there too, and stuff to unlock. You get these kind of poems when you collect all the tarot cards and stuff, and challenge levels. So there's a lot of meat on it as well. I mean, I've been back through it a couple of times, but yeah, you can just blast straight through it and have a really good time.
Awesome. Then on to I think this is your final game. I think I already know what it's going to be. I would be surprised if it's not the game I'm thinking of, but let's see. So you have your final melancholy dark world game, I think also about a road trip, maybe.
Okay, so we'll both say it together.
Yeah.
3, 2, 1. Kentucky Route Zero.
Yeah. Which is also perfect timing, because you were doing your kind of anniversary replay review podcast series on it, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I will say that like Sayonara Wild Hearts was the first time I ever saw the Annapurna Interactive logo appear on my screen. And when I did and played that game, was like, wow, this game was really something. Went and checked out their back catalog and ended up playing like every single game they've published, including like Outer Wilds, you know, all of the great stuff they've done. And one of the games that was in that catalog was Kentucky Route Zero. I really didn't know what I was getting myself into with that one. I didn't realize what it was. Another dark, melancholy world for sure, but a game unlike any other. It's made by artists who are art first and game second.
Okay.
And it has deep themes of like the underbelly of America, crumbling capitalism, like how do people survive when the world is set up to exploit them, and how do people manage to find community amidst, you know, medical bankruptcy, like home repossession, and all of the horror that people have to deal with. And it's about this like mythical underground place inspired by Mammoth Caves of Kentucky, the biggest cave system in the world that is known. And it was what would happen if all of the lost souls just moved down into the caves and made a world there. And the game is a journey through that world, that imagined world, where there are people staging plays, running restaurants and underground rivers, and you know, making museums of different kinds of houses and all of this kind of stuff. Made in 5 episodes over a 10-year period, I think. And I was lucky enough to find out about it just as the TV edition was dropping. Which was the final version. It was the version that came out on Switch. I bought a physical edition of it with a cartridge, played it on my Switch. And so that was the first time that I played my favorite game of all time, was on the Switch. So got very, very nostalgic, fond memories of that now. And like you said, as Gaming in the Wild became 5 years old, episode 0 of the podcast was a little 10-minute mumble about Kentucky Route Zero. And then 5 years later, when I'm doing like these kind of more fully fledged, fully formed reviews, I thought, you know what, the best thing to do is to go back to Kentucky Route Zero. So doing like an episode a week on all of the different acts of the game, with the community that's growing around the podcast, playing, giving me questions and feedback and thoughts as well, which I'm reading out on the show. So from episode 0 to episode whatever it is, 248 now, finally doing justice to Kentucky Route Zero.
And I don't want to spoil your new episodes on it, but is there anything that's really changed for you about the game over the last 5 years? Like, is there any themes that have become, because describing the themes of the game, they seem more topical now than ever. So is there anything that you've changed your opinion on, or feel stronger about, or is there any other games in that 5 years time that's gotten close to how you feel about Kentucky Route Zero?
Only a couple, honestly. I think it's like it's just such a rare thing that most game designers don't come to the table with the ideas or the intent that Cardboard Computer did, and so you just don't get many games like that. It's interesting to play it a second time. Obviously, the first time you play something, it's easy to get a little lost in the mystery because you're trying to figure it out as you're playing. But after playing it the first time and then spending a while reading about it, thinking about it, watching videos about it, like YouTube think pieces about what characters mean and stuff, and then like coming and getting much more grounding in what games are by playing hundreds more games across the next 4 years. You come back to it with a different viewpoint for sure. I think Kentucky Route Zero is a game that like every character name and place name is like plucked from some element of culture. Like there's a bar called the Lower Depths, and I was like, where's that from? That's got to be from something. Googled it. It's like a Gorky play about Russian peasants, like written decades ago. And like there's these characters Junebug and Johnny. There's this character Weaver and Shannon, and they are all names from different plays, different novels, all about poverty, underclass, working class, and all that kind of thing. And so the really fun thing about this playthrough for me has been like, I don't think anyone holds all of those references in their head unless there's some kind of like Rain Man or like literature PhD basically. But the fun thing about playing with the community is that everyone notices different things. So people are drawing my attention to, did you know that like Xanadu, the computer, is like taken from this thing? And so I'm getting a much more fully fledged understanding of the game. And it's the kind of game that you could write thesis about,
I get that feeling about it. It's just so great. I think like the indies offer a space for creative like that to make games. Like you said, like they're not necessarily maybe gameplay first, but they obviously had a very poignant story to tell. And to be able to do that in video game form is amazing.
I agree. And like there is one other game that has come to that height that came out last year and is on Switch actually.
I think I know this one as well. What are you going to say?
Okay. 3, 2, 1. 1,000 times resist.
Yes. I didn't know if it was 1000x or 1000 times, but yes. Another one that I'm very shameless to say that, or shameful to say that I haven't played yet, but it's definitely on my to-play list.
Yeah, I played that one on my because I've since, we are being nostalgic about the Switch here, and like I've got such a strong place in my heart for my Switch because I played all of these games on that piece of hardware. Some of them docked, some of them tucked up in bed, some of them lying on the sofa, some of them on planes. It was the first time that I'd really felt that I had like an indie game library in my pocket. But as times have moved on, the Switch is aging hardware. It's like a 720p screen. Which hurts my eyes a little bit. My eyes are getting worse as I'm getting older. The performance chip, the Tegra X1 is like now less powerful than like a potato phone from 5 years ago. So the Switch is kind of past its best by day. I now have an ROG Ally, like a PC. It's like a Steam Deck competitor. That's become my main machine now. And with access to Steam, obviously, you get access to a whole world of indie games that aren't ported because it takes so much effort to port onto Nintendo or any console. And so that has been superseded. But I think that the Switch paved the way for the Steam Deck. And I think the Switch illustrated the possibilities of like indie games on a handheld and the appetite for a handheld in gamerdom and beyond. It took games to people that weren't playing games. So it's very, very special to me for sure. And when the OLED came out, I bought like an update. So I've got my nice Switch OLED that I play on now.
I've still got my light. I know you can't see it, but for the viewers, my like neon yellow light. I was playing some Vampire Survivors before the call started, and I was like had the same problem, you know, like staring at this little man moving around on the screen with my eyes. I'm like, oh god, I can't wait till there's a bigger, more high def screen that I can play on.
Yeah, but I think the Switch is going to always be a really special one. You know, the same way that I felt about this like SP that I talked about at the start of the episode. I feel that way about the Switch too. It's like a classic piece of Nintendo hardware, just a little dream machine, really.
It is. It is. And it's like you say, it brought so many new games to so many new people. But I was wondering if there was any like kind of new genres maybe you got into playing the Switch, because as you said before, you sort of have your library in your pocket at all times, and I think that opens up a lot of different genres to be able to play. Because, you know, before, when you had maybe a 100-hour JRPG on your PlayStation at home, you couldn't just kind of pick up and play for 20 minutes at a time. Is there any kind of genres that you really, really got into that you weren't necessarily into before you got your Switch?
So many.
Yeah.
I mean, just so much had happened, man. Like, I remember being really put off by the idea of playing digital card games at first. I was like, you know, I like free movement, I like fluid movement a lot of the time.
Yeah.
Despite the fact that some of the games that I've talked about do not have that, like Kentucky Route Zero, the slowest game ever. Far Lone Sails, slow, sluggish, frustrating. But there is a place in my heart for zippy movement, like Sayonara Wild Hearts, like Pathless, Solar Ash kind of things, Jet Set Radio kind of things, Mirror's Edge. I like to be able to feel free in games.
Yeah.
So I thought, why on earth would I play a turn-based card game, which is just so plodding, when I could be like skating through a sci-fi dreamscape? But eventually, when rifling through Game of the Year lists, Slay the Spire kept coming up again and again and again. So I sprung for it, and I realized pretty quickly that I'd gone from thinking of myself not as a deck builder kind of guy to like absolutely a deck builder kind of guy.
Yeah, it's another one. I think Slay the Spire is like one of those games that I think it's opened up so many doors for indie games, because I think it's really like one of the first deck builder games that became super successful. And I think it kind of had a similar sort of experience as Hollow Knight, that it was this thing on Steam that was successful but sort of niche, and then it came over to the Switch. And I remember, I think it was during an indie direct or some kind of direct where they announced it, and I think they dropped it the same day, like Shadow dropped it, and then it just seemed to explode from there. That, like you said, like it was one of those games where people that didn't necessarily ever think they would play it played it. And I remember like Twitter back then, that was all my Twitter feed was just Slay the Spire. And I think interestingly, it's not been like that since, until Balatro came out, which is another deck builder roguelike game, which I think is just shows this kind of cool transition of like Slay the Spire moving into Balatro, and how popular these deck building games have become.
Yeah, it really set things off. Like after Slay the Spire, I was definitely hungry for more games like that. Ended up playing Inscription, very different kind of game, but it was a game of the year for me.
Yeah.
Like topped my game of the year list on that year. I think it was 2022. One that no one knows about called Iris and the Giant.
Okay.
It's like a narrative card game where you're playing as a girl with like emotional problems, and you play cards to get through her nightmares. It was recommended to me by Brad Galloway. It was his game of the year. Absolutely loved that one.
Interesting. I've never heard of it until now. And it's on the Switch.
Like Griftlands. Yeah, it's on Switch. Griftlands as well, like a story-based deck builder. Is that on Switch? Let's have a look. Yeah, Griftlands is on Switch as well. And what was the other one I was going to mention? Signs of the Sojourner. Like a conversation-based card game.
Yeah, where you have to work out the language. Like, is it the one with the ancient language? Really and cute. You kind of
It's not an ancient language. It's not that one. It's it's not Heaven's Vault. It's a game where you get cards and you only have circles and triangles at the start.
Okay.
When someone speaks on the screen, they play a card, and if they play a triangle, then you have to match it. And if you can match it, then the conversation goes well. And if you don't, then the conversation goes badly. But then you start meeting people that have like squares and, you know, upside down triangles, and you just cannot communicate with them because you don't have the cards, but you build your deck over time, and then you're able to go around routes of the map and talk to the same people again and actually communicate with them. So it's about, I think it's like a masterpiece, and it's about like building empathy, building understanding of each other just very, very original. If anyone's listening who hasn't played Signs of the Sojourner and likes the sound of that. So yeah, I would say like deck builders, roguelikes, were definitely something that the Switch opened the door for me.
Yeah, that's it's the same for me. Like I also wasn't really a deck builder, but yeah, that sounds really interesting. It sort of reminds me of when you go traveling and you meet someone who doesn't speak English, and you have to sort of somehow communicate, and somehow it always works out, even though you don't speak each other's languages. That sounds like a really interesting sort of premise for a game.
Yeah, it gets that feeling. And I think as well, it was like, with everything that's going on in the US with like the left and the right wing and the woke and the like fascists or whatever, it's like this failure of empathy and failure of building consensus. And so having a game that was based around building mutual understanding, speaking each other's languages, and arriving at an empathic place of consensus just felt like special to me at the time.
Yeah, it's a very like unique premise for a game, and only one that an indie game could fulfill, which is awesome. Yeah, then I guess that kind of leads us on to what is the future for you and your Nintendo Switch. You've already kind of said that you've sort of moved on to the ROG Ally, and it sounds like you like Zelda, but the games you listed weren't really Nintendo published games. So is the Switch 2 something you're going to be picking up like day one, or is it something you're going to kind of just wait on and see if you feel a need to get it?
Yeah, I mean, it's the games that I've chosen are like very much John games, as you mentioned the term John game. Like I thought I might as well like use the platform to talk about the games that I love in that way. But if you could see my shelf here, there is Pikmin 2, Pikmin 3, Luigi's Mansion 2, Astral Chain, Xenoblade. Yeah, like every Nintendo game, bunch of Mario games, Mario U, Mario Wonder.
Yeah.
So
great.
I absolutely love Nintendo first-party games, and they've got a very special place in my heart. But they aren't the games that I talk about much on the show, because it's like Nintendo's a different thing, and like they are creative and they are aesthetic, but they're just a different kettle of fish to the kind of games that I talk about. But I love them as much as everyone.
Okay.
My Switch is pretty much mothballed now. I very rarely bring it out. I think I did recently because I had the game Valhalla, which I'd bought like 4 years ago. And someone was talking about it to me, and I was like, I think I've got that on my Switch. So I actually charged the dead Switch to play it. But I will always keep it. I mean, it's got Hyper Light Drifter, which I've never uninstalled. It's got Hollow Knight, which I've never uninstalled. It's got Breath of the Wild. It's got Tears of the Kingdom. I will always keep it. And I mean, who am I kidding? Like, if I can get a Switch 2 on day one, I will be there for sure. Like, maybe we're going to get Silksong on there. I don't know. What's your big hope for a Switch 2 launch game?
I think I'm not really sure. Like, I think the obvious one is the new Mario Kart, like Mario Kart 9, since they've already shown it. And I think the other one is Metroid Prime 4. But I think, I don't know, like Metroid Prime 4 doesn't seem like the mass market appealing game that you would launch a system with. It seems more like the one like, okay, for the gamers in quotation marks, this is for you. Here's a game that is more mass market, which is maybe Mario Kart. But I'm thinking that maybe they'll have one more.
I mean, a Mario platformer, right? Odyssey 2.
This is the question, I think, because like looking back at the launch of the Switch, the original Switch, I think it came in like the October, and the Switch launched in March, so they put a bit of distance between it. So I could imagine it being like the Christmas game this year. It's like the next big Mario platformer. But I think I'm secretly hoping for Animal Crossing. A new Animal Crossing would be great. Like,
it would be about time, wouldn't it?
Exactly.
I mean, yeah, if you think like Nintendo's like a new Pokemon, a new Mario, a new Metroid, Mario Kart. We've just had a new Zelda, but Switch 2 is probably going to have a remastered. This is an interesting one to me too, right? It's like, how are they going to handle upgrade paths? Is it going to be that games, because we've heard that you can port your library from old Switch to new Switch, but are games going to have £10 upgrade paths? Are they going to have £60 Switch 2 versions? Or are they just going to run better by magic? Because Nintendo owns everything, both platforms and all the code. They could do it. Free upgrades.
The problem with Nintendo is it could be none of those things. It could be just some random thing where they're like, oh, we'll post you your additional upgraded Switch version, because they just don't like to do what other people do. I'm kind of hoping that's also what I'm sort of thinking, is that, like, to be honest, at launch I'm quite happy if it's just Mario Kart 9, because you've already listed a bunch of great games on the original Switch which I haven't played yet, and my backlog is already extensive on the Switch as well, where I'm like, okay, well, I'm mostly just looking forward to having games run better, hopefully, like whether that's you have to pay for some upgrade, or the Switch games will just run natively better on the Switch 2 than on the original. That's what I'm most looking forward to, is like a nice, because I never got the OLED. I've always just had the original and the Lite, and I mostly play my Lite. So I'm just like, I just need something new. I need something a bit more, I don't know, easier to look at, like runs better, doesn't sound like it's about to take off when I'm loading up, I don't know, Zelda or whatever.
Yeah.
But
the OLED doesn't perform any better. It's just literally just the screen being brighter and bigger.
Yeah.
It's better for the eye strain. But even like that last Zelda game, what was it called? Echoes of Wisdom.
Yeah.
Just runs like crap, like a chugging, and it's a little simple game.
Well, I never got the OLED because I was like, oh, the Switch 2 will be coming out next year, and that was what, like 4 years ago. So yeah. No, but what about you? What do you have any kind of wild predictions for the Switch 2 launch, the launch lineup, or the launch kind of year, the rest of 2025?
Yeah, I do. I got one.
Oh.
It's in my Fantasy Critic League, right? Because we bid up and down. Someone got Mario, someone got Mario Kart. I think I picked Citizen Sleeper 2 first, which came in 86, not bad.
Nice.
But by the time it got back to me, all of the expected Nintendo games were taken. But I watch a streamer called Kyle Bosman, who has been predicting for years the return of Donkey Kong.
Ooh.
And Donkey Kong has had like an area of Nintendo World in Japan, like it's got its own area. Donkey Kong's had was there like an animated thing coming out?
Yeah.
Donkey Kong's in like that fighting game that everyone loves, Smash Bros.
Yeah. He was in the
Mario movie.
Yeah.
And so it feels like Donkey Kong is due for a renaissance. If you think about Princess Peach has had her own game. Captain Toad has had his own game. Luigi has got all of his own games. Kirby has had his own big time game. Like, where's Kong? I think it's going to be the year of Kong. So that's my hot prediction for Switch 2. Brand new mainline Donkey Kong.
I think you're asking all the right questions there, John. I think now I've never thought about it, but they also had the HD remake at the start of the year. It's kind of like here's like a little morsel for you to chew on, and then maybe
getting him back on the map.
Yeah. And do you think it'll be a 2D, like a kind of Tropical Freeze, Donkey Kong Country, or
I think it's Donkey Kong Odyssey.
I
think it's 3D Donkey Kong game.
Wow, that is. Now you're getting crazy.
Well, I actually got it on my Fantasy Critic team. So.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
So like Odyssey, like Mario. Okay. Cool. Yeah, that's a shout out or a hot take that I've not heard yet, but I like it.
Year of Kong. Year of Kong. You heard it here first. Hashtag Year of Kong.
Yeah, let's. It's a series and a kind of an IP that I've not really played. Like I have Donkey Kong Country Returns on the Wii. And I had every intention to play it, and maybe I still will, but I was like, I've not got around to it yet. But that's
there hasn't really been a good one, I played the original Donkey Kong Country with that kind of weird graphic style.
Yeah,
it's like kind of half sort of like a claymation model, a little bit early polygon.
Yeah,
that kind of period that did not age well. And I've not really played them since then. People say Tropical Freeze is good, but I don't know. I think they took Mario from 2D to 3D. And Donkey Kong being like a classic Nintendo, in the original Donkey Kong, it's Mario's first game. Mario was the supporting actor. Yeah. So it's time for Donkey Kong to take center stage.
Yeah. No, I think that's a great shout out. Like I said, it's not one I've heard before, but it's a good one. It makes sense when you start thinking about it. It makes a lot of sense.
But I wanted to ask you actually, Adam, because you're going to do this series of podcasts, right? Where you're going to have people on to talk about their Switch memories. Are you going to give it the treatment yourself? I'd really like to hear the games that you were nostalgic about.
Yeah, I definitely think maybe I'll definitely do one on my own because like I said, it's been, especially now with Beat Your Backlog, I've tried to get more into it. I started off because I finished Switch Indie Fix and basically took a break, and then kind of had the itch where I was like, I like making content. I like like I find podcasting a bit like therapy sometimes, where it's kind of nice to get everything out of your head about a game, where you just can talk and talk and talk and whatever, you just put it out, and if people listen to it, fine. If not, you've at least got all of your thoughts documented somewhere. And then like the last 6 months, I've been trying to take it a bit more seriously, and that's why I launched the Patreon, and looking back and also trying to find a lot of the old Switch Indie Fix content. So it's been very like nostalgic to be like, okay, like reading the old reviews, like looking back on Instagram at the stuff I was making and the games I was playing. And I think it's like I don't know, I also like became a father last year, and I think that also makes you like very nostalgic for just random reasons, because you kind of thinking about what your child's going to experience and what they're going through, and what, you know, what they will look back on as like something that they'll kind of be nostalgic for. So I think, yeah, definitely once the series kind of rounds off, like I'll do my own one, because yeah, like I said, it's been such a, it sounds kind of cheesy, but the Switch has been like a big part of my life. Like, you know, I think I started Switch Indie Fix in 2017, and you know, you were writing for it. There was lots of, I think at one point we had 10 people working on the website, and a lot of those people are still in contact with. Like we had Discord server. A lot of the people there are kind of like legacy people who have joined during Switch Indie Fix, and have, like, luckily for me, have stuck around for Beat Your Backlog. And yeah, I think it's like a big chapter in the life where it's like, okay, the Switch it's come, it's gone. We can kind of move forward to what's next, but it's nice to look back and kind of, yeah, remember how it was, kind of. So yeah, that's the plan.
Yeah, really nice. Yeah, it was really fun writing for Switch Indie Fix as well. It just seemed like it was a time when there was just so many indie games coming out, and they were all coming to Switch.
Yeah.
And you were doing the hard work of dealing with all the PRs, getting the codes, editing the text, and getting it online. So thanks very much for doing all that at the time. It was nice to be a part of it.
Yeah, and thank you. And I'm really like pleased for how it's gone for you. Like the podcast, like I said, I it's one of my favorite podcasts. It's a regular listen, and it just seems to be going from strength to strength. So congratulations on that as well.
Thanks, man.
Cool. Then, John, if there's anything else you would like to point out about the Switch or your time with the Switch, but if not, then we can wrap up the episode.
I will finish by saying one thing. When I got my OLED, my classic, lovely, old grey base model Switch, I was sitting in my cupboard, and I was like, oh, this feels bad. Like, wouldn't someone else like a Switch? And so my friend Nicholas, who kind of low-key likes games but is not a gamer, would sometimes ask me like what I was playing. It's like playing Gone Home on his little PC laptop.
Yeah.
And so I ended up giving it to him with like a bunch of cartridges that I wasn't using. And I checked in with him later, and he was like, yeah, I played all of Witcher 3. Wow. I played all of Assassin's Creed 3 and 4. I'm currently playing through Black Flag. And I was like, what the hell, man? I thought you were just going to tinker with it a little bit. He just straight finished Witcher 3 on the Switch. So my old Switch went to a new home.
Oh, that's good. I wonder that, like, I remember when the Vita kind of died off or was dying off, and there was a podcast kind of channel that I listened to called Kind of Funny, and they were saying like, oh, if you don't use your old Vitas, like send them to us and we'll kind of rehome them for people that want them. And it's like nice. It's just like a nice idea to do that with the Switch as well, because obviously I have two that I'm probably not going to use. Like, to be honest, I don't really want it because I have such like a nostalgia with them, especially with my Lite. I'm like, I don't know if I want to give them away, but it's really nice that you could pass that on. And I think the Switch is the only console where I think someone who's maybe not like a gamer with like a capital G can get into those hardcore kind of, you know, fantasy RPGs and Assassin's Creed and just play through them. It's such a great console. So yeah.
Yeah, and I will say as well, like I have got like in the back of my mind there is because I bought a Switch physical game collection. It's the only console that I did that for, and it's because I got fondness for Nintendo cartridges from the old days. You know what I mean? Like this little SP here has got this old Mario World that I had since I was a kid, basically. It's like the same one I had when I was a kid. Nice. And so there is like a nostalgic idea in my head that later in life, when I'm playing on the ROG Ally 5 in like tactile VR and like tasting the food that I'm eating in Cyberpunk 7, I will still have my Switch, and it's like its physical game collection. maybe there's like a nephew, maybe there's a friend, maybe there's some kid that's like curious about games, and I can just say, look, this is Luigi's Mansion on the old Switch, and let them play on it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's something nice about having the physical collection and having the old console, and like maybe giving it, like having it for myself, but maybe like opening it up to someone else in the future too.
Yeah, and letting them taste how bad the cartridges taste. That's you know, like a rite of passage. I can't wait till my daughter's old enough that she can safely put it in her mouth and spit it back out. Cool. Then, John, before we go, do you want to maybe tell the people that are listening, if they don't know already, where they can find you?
Yeah, if people are listening and they've enjoyed it, then and they want to hear more from me, then I'm gaming in the wild everywhere on YouTube, on Blue Sky. I'm talking a lot there about games, like posting screenshots and sharing recommendations. The YouTube channel, I'm making like month ahead videos, so it's all of the games that are coming out in March. The next one will be April. And so I've got like 15 games that I want to recommend. A lot of them are just not on anyone's radar. So doing this like month ahead homework. Then there is, of course, the weekly podcast, which is just game reviews, a little bit of game news, what I'm playing. It's kind of focused on contemporary releases right now. Just did an Assassin's Creed Shadows episode. We are doing the Kentucky Route Zero playthrough there. Always some new indie games on the block. You can find all of the links at gaminginthewild.com, or just if you Google Gaming in the Wild, then I think it comes up top, and you can find the channel and the podcast and everything.
I'll put the links.
Thanks for that little self-promo spot.
You're welcome. You're welcome. And I highly suggest if people aren't already subscribed or listening, that they should go over and listen, and I'll put all the links to your stuff in the description. And I just also want to shout out your video that you did on Silk Song. Was very, very good. Your Steam Next Fest video was great as well. Like you said, a lot of games there I had no idea existed, and have them on my wish list now. And I saw today or yesterday you released one about best indies of GDC, or best games of GDC, which
man, there's so much stuff that I hadn't heard of.
Yeah.
Game called Void Martyrs. I'm like obsessed with all of a sudden, just like refreshing the page to see if the demo is available for the public. Game called Will Follow the Light. That looks amazing, about a guy. It's like sailing a sailboat through the ocean, which we don't really see in many games. So yeah, loads of new games in that video too.
Cool. So yes, please go and check out John's YouTube channel because it's great. Then, guys, I'd just like to thank you all for listening to episode 59 of the Beat Your Backlog podcast. I would, of course, love to know what your Nintendo Switch memories are, or if you want to suggest some Switch content creators you would like to see on the podcast, please let me know, and maybe even just send them a link to this podcast so they know that, you know, I'm legit and not just some random person like cold calling them, asking them to come on my podcast. If you're a Spotify listener, you can let me know by commenting on the episode. And if you're listening elsewhere, you can let me know on social media by @me at Blue Sky, on Blue Sky, Beat Your Backlog Podcast, or on Instagram at BYB_podcast, or you can come and join the BYB Discord. The link is in the description. And if you're interested in listening to more Nintendo Switch content, make sure you check out episode 50 of the podcast, where I go through my very ambitious Nintendo Switch predictions and, in brackets, hopes. And if you've enjoyed the episode and would like to show your support, please consider subscribing at Patreon for the $2 or $5 tier. If you do, it gets you access to all of my content 24 hours earlier than everyone else, and also gets you access to the Patreon exclusive podcast, Beat Your Bonus. And finally, guys, as always, reviews help. So if you enjoyed the episode, please make sure you review with 5 stars. And John, thank you so much for being on the podcast. I really enjoyed just chatting to you. It's been ages since we caught up, and I'm glad this kind of topic worked out. It was really interesting, and thanks so much for joining.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. I'm going to go and join your Patreon now. I didn't realize there was a bonus podcast.
Thank you. Yes, 2 episodes out right now. One is my top 10 Nintendo published games on the Switch, so very topical for this conversation. And the other one is my top 10 indie games ever, which is also kind of topical. Then I think the next one...
I can't wait for those. I'm really looking forward to those now. $2, I'm in.
Yes, and the next one is my Steam wish list. I'm calling it Wishlist Wonders. Went through my Steam wish list, and it's like a thing I plan to do every year to see, like, kind of go through what's new, what I'm looking forward to for that year. So yeah, lots of content coming up there too. Cool. Then thank you so much, John. Bye.
Thanks a lot. See you.